You want to make a bit more bread? Don't want to work until you're dead. So come and listen ahead and find some other ways instead.
In this week's episode of the Financial Freeman podcast, we will explain why property thrashes inflation as long as you take out a mortgage. So we'll remember 2 weeks ago we discussed inflation. We explained that there's push factors, the costs going up, and also then there's demand going up as well. That leads to increase in prices temporarily. But more importantly is what the government want to do, and that is that they are targeting inflation to bring the huge level of debt that they've got down. That is the only way they can do it, okay? The only way they can do it properly. So it's accepted that there's going to be inflation. The government want that. They're going to do anything they can to do it, okay? So that's premise number one. Last week, we discussed that savers lose out. Poor Jack, do you remember him? Okay.
I do.
He, unfortunately, his parents died, and he also lost a lot of his money as a result of keeping the money in the bank.
He gained a bit of money, but that money wasn't worth much by the time he took it out 50 years later.
Exactly. So what do we do?
Metaphorically.
So what do we do? Okay. What should Jack have done? That's the question.
I know. He should have bought all the houses.
Exactly. He should have used that £1 million that he got.
Wait. Why houses, not stocks and shares?
Maybe that, but let's just save that for another episode. But okay. Inflation, property is really powerful against inflation, okay, as a result of what we're going to talk about, okay? So we'll discuss stocks and shares and inflation another time, okay? But property is what we think, and we're not giving financial advice, but while we think property can beat inflation, okay? So the rule number one, okay, and this is rental income. Now this is fairly basic and doesn't mean you win 10-0, but it means that you are at the very least drawing 1-1 and possibly even winning 2-1.
Not everyone's a football fan.
Okay, and that is that rent goes up in line with inflation.
Really? Like neck and neck?
Pretty much. Now the reason for this is fairly simple, because despite what we said last week, where we said that wages may not go in line with inflation, they do tend to over a longer period, okay? So prices go up, therefore companies tend to have more money. This is very simple, but therefore they can afford to give their employees more money and wages go up. Now, if they've got more money in their back pocket, they're willing to spend more of that on their living accommodation, essentially on their rent. Now, unofficially, but over a longer term, rent has usually been 1/3 of their overall income. They've then spent that on rent. So rent therefore goes up broadly in line with inflation. There may be a lag because you've got to get the money circulating to go to the employees. The employees have then got to get to welfare, and the rent to be able to be pushed up. Okay, so it may not be overnight, but just understand that you are generally fairly protected in terms of rent. Does that make sense? That's
understood.
Premise one, easy. Okay, but that doesn't that's not kind of making headlines. That's just nice to know that your income from property isn't going down as opposed to inflation like your savings was.
Has rent ever gone down?
Yeah, rent has gone down. This last year, it went down about 10% in London. So it went up in most parts of the country, but it went down in London, especially in areas because of less demand. Okay, so rent is very similar to a normal good. It can suffer from supply and demand. Okay, in the same way that cheese can, but. So the supply of rental stock may suddenly kind of go higher. Everyone suddenly might think, let's invest in Crewe, because Crewe is going to be a train. There's going to be a new train line going from Crewe to London. This is kind of half true. So everyone might invest in Crewe. Therefore, there might then be lots of rental stock on the market. And therefore, tenants have a lot more choice and are therefore willing to pay less as a result. Okay. So yes, rent is very much...
Are tenants willing to pay less, or then landlords have to drop the prices to get the houses full?
Yeah, okay, exactly that.
All tenants are willing to pay less.
Yeah, obviously. Okay, yes, so you're all right. So
thank you.
Rent is very much a normal good in that respect, and therefore just for the purpose of this, we'll treat it as a normal good, and it's going up in line with inflation, okay? Point number two, okay, and this is the big one, okay? This is that property prices, when used, are going up also in line with inflation, okay? Then there's different dynamics, but there's essentially more money in the economy, okay? Again, So there's more money in the economy that gets pushed into assets. Now, there's a lot more complex things to discuss here, in that bonds are therefore become less attractive and people need a better sort of route for investment.
I'm lost.
And these property, I knew you'd be lost. But just for the purpose of this, all I want you to know is that property prices are also going up, okay, in line with inflation. And actually, historically, certainly since 1971, and I know I keep banging on about this year, but we will discuss in future why, but since 1971, they've gone up dramatically more than inflation.
If you write a book, you should call it
1971 maybe, yeah. It might not be as popular as 1984. Maybe our 20 followers might read it, but
I'd read it.
okay, so maybe one day. Right, so, but the key really, and this is the key, is leverage, okay? This is getting out a mortgage, because let's take...
Explain what's leverage.
Leverage is using a mortgage, okay?
Right.
So I'll say mortgage from now on, but
Okay.
there's leverage, borrowing, okay? To take your £100,000 property, okay? The standard mortgage you can take out from that is 75% of that value, £75,000, okay? So you've got £25,000 of your own money, which is what we call equity. £25,000 yours, £75,000 the bank, okay? Now, let's see what happens to that £25,000, okay? And if inflation exists at 3% and the house price goes up at 3%, now it will go up more than that probably historically since 1971, but let's say it's 3%, okay?
Why are you saying 3 then?
Just call it that because it's actually conservative. So in 1 year's time, your £100,000 property has gone up 3%. How much is that?
£103,000.
£103,000. So you've gained £3,000, but actually you've gained a lot more than that. This is why your equity was only £25,000. So your £25,000 has gone up to £28,000, okay? And
That means you own £28,000 of that property.
yes, correct. Now, actually, proportionally, okay, as a percentage, once you knock off your 3% again for inflation purposes, because you've still got your...
Back to square one.
No, you've gained 9%. So the difference from 25 to 28 minus your inflation is 9% actually increase.
What?
Yeah, because it's not just because you are getting the gain from the house price increase, not the bank. The amount you're paying back the bank, assuming it's interest only,
Right,
is the
so it's a
same.
complex
You
math.
are gaining that £3,000. So actually, you're gaining your £3,000, but on your £25,000. So you're returning that respect.
3,000 of 25,000 is 9%.
Yes, correct. Once you've taken into account for inflation. So you're getting 9% after inflation, plus your rental income for that 1 year. Okay,
Oh
fantastic.
yeah, for rent too.
And rent too, fantastic. And this is kind of why it's very attractive. Now, after 10 years, still at 3%, okay, the value of that property is gone up to 135, actually compounded, okay, 135, which means your equity is now 35 plus 25? 60, okay? So you've more than doubled
So
what you put
60
in.
grand of
So
that
you started
property.
with 25, you've now technically
And
got...
you paid a bit of your mortgage off.
No, you're not paying any mortgage off. It's interest only.
Oh.
So you started £25,000. You've now got £60,000. And when I say
if you sold
you've got that in
property
equity. Exactly.
Tomorrow, your 60,000's in your back pocket.
Exactly. You pay off the bank and you've got that extra. Okay, that's yours. Okay, which is fantastic. Okay, because it's now the profit is all yours. So you've gained because profit's gone up. Okay, so this is, and actually that works out as a return on your investment of 146%. Fantastic.
In 10
Over 10 years. Okay, so even though, right, prices have not got doubled in 10 years, they've only, in this example, only gone up in line with inflation. Now, actually, they've gone up a lot more than that. In future episodes, again, we'll discuss that they've gone up a lot more than inflation since 1971. Just for now, assuming it only goes up 3%, you've more than doubled your income if you've used an interest-only mortgage. Whew, fantastic. Is there any more?
Of course there
Yes.
because property is just like a gem that
Yes.
keeps on giving.
One more huge factor.
Yeah, go on.
The value of that debt. So, remember how much debt we took out to get
25.
that? No, 25 was our equity. 75 was our equity. Okay, in 10 years' time, what do you think the value? Okay, so it's still, you've got to pay back the £75,000. I know you like to be a sticker.
Value is minus 3% a year. I don't
It's
know.
hard now. Do you want to take a guess what it is roughly?
50 grand.
Exactly that. 48,000 and something. 50 grand. So the value of the property, your equity is going up, and the value you've got to pay back to the bank has gone down.
Well,
Magic.
And then,
And for those,
and
go on.
I say, if you want to go to the bank because you want to buy a new property, and then-
Go on. No, go on. Yeah, go on.
and say, actually, I'll remortgage now,
Yes.
and then they'll give you 75% of that extra 35k, which is, I don't know, 27k,
Yeah.
and then that'll buy you a new house.
There you go. Okay. So,
Freebies.
unbelievable that you are beating.
Unbelievable!
You are beating inflation by doing this. Okay. So I think that's probably enough for now. All I would say is go back and listen to this episode, because you've got to realise what's actually happening here and how powerful a mechanism this can be. And we've been really conservative with these figures, but we've shown that you can more than double your profit in 10 years time, which is obviously quite a small time frame that we're looking at.
I don't think 10 years.
Well, okay, but
feels long when you got kids.
yeah,
but-
maybe. So that is it for now. I hope you enjoyed that, found that useful. Next week, we're going to discuss what the real rate of inflation is, okay? And then the week after that,
whoa.
we're going
How
to
many episodes of
discuss
inflation?
lots. I love it. The week after that, we're going to discuss other ways you can beat inflation, okay? So next week, we're going to discuss why the inflation rate isn't really 2%, 2.5%. It is way higher than that, okay? And that's the time to probably start panicking. And the week after that, we'll discuss what else you can do apart from just buy property.
But before you panic and take our inflation experts' advice to heart, please bear in mind that the content of this podcast is for general information purposes and not a recommendation to act. Please contact us or an independent financial advisor if you would like further chat. You can contact us on gary.financialfreeman@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.